Hello and welcome. You're listening to the MLTI podcast, Teaching with Tech. We're your hosts, Chris Beckwith
and Amy McInerney, and we represent the MLTI Ambassador team at the Maine Department of Education. Today, we have a special episode as we bring together some incredible voices from the MLTI community. This is the final episode of our podcast, and as we hit pause on this current adventure, we are excited to end on a high note with some familiar faces as we look back.
That's right, Amy. We're joined by three amazing past MLTI ambassadors and pioneers of this very podcast, Rob Dominick, Joshua Schmidt, and Tracy Williamson. They've been working at the intersection of technology and education for years, and today they'll share their experiences with delivering content through this podcast from its inception.
If you've been following along with the podcast, you know that technology plays such a pivotal role in education. But it's not just about the tech. It's about how educators and students are using it to enhance learning experiences. And that's what we're focusing on today.
Exactly. Rob, Joshua, and Tracy will discuss how their experiences as MLTI ambassadors allowed them opportunities to connect with educators across the state and how they leverage the podcast for that purpose.
It's clear these three were passionate about the podcast and about uplifting the work of other educators throughout Maine.
Let's get to it. We're thrilled to share this final conversation with all of you. Let's welcome MLTI Ambassador Jeff Ireland and our guests, Rob, Joshua, and Tracy, to the podcast.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Ireland, and I am a second-year MLTI Ambassador. I have the pleasure of talking today with three former MLTI ambassadors about their work on the Teach with Tech podcast. Since this is the last episode of the Teach with Tech podcast, we thought it would be cool to invite back the three ambassadors who had a huge impact on the success of the podcast. So I'd like you guys to go ahead and take a second, introduce yourselves and where you're at now. Rob, you want to start?
Yeah, hi. My name is Rob Dominick. After coming back from the two-year ambassador job, I returned to my school at Brewer Community School in Brewer, Maine, and I've been doing back in my role at 7th grade math.
I can go next. My name is Joshua Schmidt, and after my 2 years were up with the MLTI team, I took a new position down at Durham Community School, being back in 7th and 8th grade math, which is my two favorite grade levels to teach. So I've been there now for about 3 months.
And I'm Tracy Williamson, and after my MLTI ambassador time, I made a huge shift from Maine. I moved to Santa Barbara, California, where I am now the JK through 8 STEAM specialist, working with students from 3 years old all the way to 8th grade in all kinds of cool stuff. So JK is like preschool. It's so we have 2 levels. So we have JK3, which is 3-year-olds, JK4, which is 4-year-olds, and then we go to kindergarten and on. And I actually, next week or the after break, I'm starting a JK robotics enrichment after school. So I'm going to have a whole bunch of 3 and 4-year-olds doing Indy cars and whatnot.
That sounds fantastic. Rob, would you mind starting and telling us how did this idea for this podcast come about, and what was it like during that first year?
Yeah, sure. We were kind of brainstorming that first year as we're trying to figure out what this ambassador role was going to look like. You know, what's the best way to help educators and reach them? Yes, we would like to be able to go in the classrooms and meet up with them, but that wasn't going to be all the time. You know, what else could we come up with to reach them from afar? PD videos, EdWeb type of stuff. Sure, that's great, but podcasts are pretty popular. We all had our kind of podcasts that we like to latch on to and listen to. So kind of it started being talked about that first year when I was there to try to bring something to fruition. But again, as we were figuring things out that first year, nothing came of it until the second year when we brought on the other ambassadors. We had some more manpower, some more ideas to bounce off of people. So we were able to kind of really bring it together second year and then kind of cater it towards what do educators need, kind of surveying the field with everybody, what would be best, what timeline, what do we want to focus on. And it was really, really fun project, honestly, to be able to do that and always kind of have that going as a constant, and feel like it was making an impact with educators around the state. It was really cool. I really liked just interviewing people and talking to them and hearing their story and what their impact is in education. Because I mean, I don't know. To me, it was just amazing to hear how everybody was doing and what they were doing, because you don't always celebrate that. You know, you don't always hear about all those little things. You hear about some of the big awards every now and then, but to be able to talk to people at conferences or set up a separate meeting and just hear them out, and this is what the amazing stuff's going on around the state. It was just really, really fun to start.
It's funny, we talk about on the MLTI team how much educators don't realize the value of their work, and that some of the stuff that they're doing is so amazing. So when you ask them to share, they don't always realize how interesting and valuable the work that they're doing is. And so this seems like a great platform for educators to be celebrated.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right with that. I mean, now I'm back in the trenches, so to speak here. Like, yeah, you do what you do, and I mean, nobody, I don't think, goes into teaching for the celebrity. Like, you're going into it to really make the grind and make a difference, and you enjoy working with the kids. So the fact that somebody's at least there, I mean, it's always going to feel good if somebody's there to help celebrate what you're doing and be like, no, what you're doing is awesome. You're doing great. Keep it up. So I'm glad you guys were able to kind of continue that theme with it.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate that. Tracy, you and Joshua picked up the reins after Rob went back into the classroom, and I had the privilege of watching the two of you work last year. And would you guys mind talking a little bit about how that worked, and even some of the evolution of the technology that you guys used in the editing and production of the podcast?
So when Rob pitched the podcast idea, I remember, so it was our first year. I was super excited because coming from what I was doing was teaching music and a lot of music technology, a lot of sound editing, like that was totally my wheelhouse. So I was so like super excited to jump into that. And it ended up almost being like, so I think I introduced Soundtrap to you guys, and then you guys really ran with it. And I kind of like sat back and I was like, this is awesome. And like answer questions here and there if, as needed. But then it really wasn't until the second year that I think I started doing more of the editing and stuff, right, with Josh. Yeah, but I like the whole time I was really excited to work on that project because I just loved getting into the sound editing, being in the background and making things sound cool. And
yeah, kind of when Rob was talking about one of the favorite parts of the project was like seeing what teachers are doing out in the field and kind of learning from that experience. For me, it was a little bit more selfish in the sense of like, I just really wanted to learn from the team itself. And so when Tracy first started talking about this, just understanding how much depth there is in what I could learn. And I don't think I ever would have imagined over the course of like 18 months that we worked on it, of just how deep into that process we got. We were able to turn that into direct professional development for teachers themselves. And we talked about the tools we used in professional development. But I still do that now. Like whenever I need to record good audio, like I still use a lot of the tools that we used on team. Soundtrap was probably the backbone of everything that we did. It was still probably the most powerful, but eventually that second year, we started using AI tools like Descript to clean up audio. There were so many good tools like Vocal Remover to clean up the background of it, but also to splice things together, and finding out that they're all really relatively easy to use if you just have somebody to kind of get you through that baby step early on and just kind of that safety net. So for me, editing was always really scary at first, but knowing that whatever I messed up, Tracy could just fix later was a very nice feeling. And eventually, I didn't need it as much. But I think I bring that back into the classroom now, just that sense of like being that safety net for somebody else to try something new is extremely valuable. But like Rob said, like learning from each other is just this continuous and productive cycle.
Yeah, I just want to jump in on that and just give Tracy some more kudos there, because I totally agree. The amount I learned, just like I knew what would sound good, like podcasts. I'm like, in general, they're like, oh, that sounds good, and then other ones are like, oh, I can't continue. I couldn't place my finger on it. But after her expertise and what she brought in and things like that, what you could do with the sound is like, oh wow, that's why that happens. And I loved it. Honestly, I loved it. I loved the nuances to it and how to make things work. And I don't know. To me, it treated like kind of like statistics and math. Like you kind of twist it and you can make things however you want, and you can, really doctor it up, or you can change the mood of things. And just, I learned so much about kind of the music piece of it and how to edit that. It was fun.
It did turn me into a bit of a podcast audio snob, though. I absolutely cannot listen to. I love podcasts. I listen to them all the time, and I get really like frustrated when a podcast has this like audio issue that they could have cleaned up. Like knowing how it's really not that hard to do it, and feeling frustrated when you're listening to it, like, man, these audio levels do not match at all, or I have to like change the volume on my car to hear one speaker versus the other. And kind of just living in that, for the year and a half, it is kind of funny now how much that sticks with you, and just understanding how valuable those little small improvements can be.
And I would say that, well, having been recording a few audio clips here and there and whatnot, seeing a little bit of what it takes to put it together, and then hearing the final product and realizing just what it took to make that final product. Here we are just kind of chatting and knowing that there's going to be an awful lot of work ahead of time to splice things together. And then when it's done well, you'd almost never know there was that much work done. So kudos to you guys. If you were thinking to, or if you were asked by a fellow educator about podcasting with students in the classroom, what tips might you give them to get started, or things to avoid?
My first thing comes to mind: start small. Like really take some time, and I don't know, depending on the age, 5 to 10 minute clips. Kind of work on those little things that we just kind of talked about, because I think it makes a big difference, and I think that's what they can feel most proud of. The content will come later. You can always build out the content, but those little skills about spicing the audio, kind of, cutting out some things, putting in some music, setting the tone, I feel like that would make a big difference in small segments to start with. Just do a quick interview, or just, do a couple minutes about explaining about your topic, what you're learning about, or whatever that might be. Take the time to go through, kind of clean it up a little bit. Because I think that makes a big difference, as Josh said, just the audio levels, how did that come out? Reflect on it kind of in those small chunks, and then build out content from there.
When Rob and I did some professional development, he really pushed something that stuck with me, and I feel like it gets more valuable over time, is focus on purpose and audience right away. And rather than just, I want to do a podcast, understanding like, what do I actually want to do? Like, what do I want my kids to achieve? And then what is the final audience that we're going to be presenting this to? Is it fully in the classroom? Is it community-based? Is it broader than that? Because it totally changes the tools that you would recommend and the strategies you would use. And so if you don't have that good basis of where you're starting, I feel like you can end up doing a lot more work than you intended to, or you're going to feel like you wasted a lot of effort, like in the middle of that process, because you didn't have kind of that straight line of where you were trying to end up. And so I remember when Rob pointed that out, as one of those things I hadn't thought about. And now I constantly think about that with all of the stuff we do. Like, what is the purpose? What is the audience? And then you kind of choose your tool from that point.
Yeah, I would say also to have students really dig into and listen to and analyze podcasts and all the different components, because you hear a podcast, but you don't necessarily process all the different things that are happening, like sound bites and music in the background, the things that are elevating the podcast when you don't even realize it. And here we have electives every trimester, and it's kind of like a offer whatever you want sort of elective. So third term, I'm collaborating with an 8th grade English teacher, and we're going to do podcasting. So if that's what we're going to do, we're going to start with analyzing, listening to different podcasts, and then the students are going to choose whatever topic they want to create their podcast on. So I'm looking forward to that a lot.
And that made me think a little bit, Tracy, too, of I did not put enough value into the like script before you actually like start talking is so valuable. And that's where, as a teacher, I feel like you get so much of that thinking and learning with it. And like Rob said, the content will come along later, but getting the kids to plan ahead and think about what they're going to say and how does that like interact with another speaker on it is so valuable. And it's pretty detached usually from the content that you have directly, but it really, really pays off in lots of different, methodologies.
It also seems to me like it's a tremendous opportunity for interdisciplinary work. To take whatever content you happen to be in, you can pull in some unified arts. Again, maybe you're working with a music teacher to create some sound, and then you maybe can pull in some of the technology, and then also an opportunity really to hand it over to the kids and let them have some ownership over it and be proud of it as their product. And heaven knows that student engagement is probably as important as it ever has been in schools, and this seems like a pretty good opportunity to try to increase that. So if I had to ask you to suggest a podcast that you might, and if you don't, that's okay, a podcast that you listen to, whether it be educational or not. There's a lot of podcasts out there, and so I imagine that there are times when educators might benefit from hearing other educators say, here's a little nugget.
One that I had actually started listening to at the end of last year to get some ideas for our own podcast was the Modern Classrooms Project. Has been doing, it's like 200 plus episodes at this point. And they talk a lot about kind of authenticity and ownership and student learning. But really my avenue was for teachers who are thinking about letting kids work at their own speed. They talk a lot about the nuts and bolts of what that could look like and for different content areas. And I really liked how they had such a specific theme, and each episode kind of stays within its lane a little bit. Pretty good. So Modern Classrooms Project is probably the education focused one that I would recommend the most.
I like the Cult of Pedagogy podcast with Jennifer Gonzalez. That's kind of one that I always check in on and see what topics they have. House of Ed Tech, get the guy's name on there. I like that one. I kind of like the tone and how they bring in the content, and it feels very authentic in that one. Those kind of the main two ones I'll check on. But then honestly, I'm a baseball coach. I'm big into that in the spring. There's a Patrick Jones. He's a former baseball hitting coach, so he's got some connections. I like to hear that. I put that on longer car rides. Just interesting things. My kids like listening to that one too with me sometimes, even the wife as well. And then I gotta be honest, I will just like search for a topic and just see what they've got, because I've come across like psychology podcasts where I might not listen to all they have, but I'll listen to certain things that kind of cross over the educational realm, like addiction with technology. But they've got it's a psychology based one, so it's got some other stuff going on. So I'll just kind of cross paths like that and just kind of search and bounce around depending if I just want a specific topic.
One other that I would add as well is Maine Education Matters with Matt Dricard. And that one is really good for, I think a lot that we've talked about is kind of like teaching specific and like content specific. That one's a little bit broader in terms of like the educational landscape, especially legislatively. And I don't have nearly as much time to stay on top of that as I used to. So it is really nice to like every month to have somebody who's done all of that work that I don't have the time to do and give me kind of a short synopsis on the things that are coming down, things that maybe aren't happening, and things that might be down the road.
Fantastic suggestions. So I recognize that I'm going to ask this to three tired teachers, but what is it that excites you most about being back in the classroom?
So I am excited to be just in a completely different role than I was before. Everything is brand new, and every day is different. I have such amazing variety in being a STEAM integrator right now that I'm, one day I'm working on building Native American dwellings in the makerspace with students. And then after that, I've got, littles coming in to do robotics. And then I'm working with sixth graders on 3D printing. And I've just got constantly, it's just a revolving door of nonstop amazing projects. And I'm just always researching how to do the next cool thing. So it's just really entertaining. And I'm just glad to be doing something new. And now just recently, they started asking if I'd bring in a little music component too. So I'm starting to bring back a little bit of what I was doing with all this new stuff. And it's just, I don't know, it's really fun. I'm really glad to be doing what I'm doing right now.
So I'll honestly I really enjoyed my time with the ambassador program. So as I was, had to shift gears and change my thinking back. it was really just the energy, honestly, that I really enjoyed returning to at the school. I enjoy our school. I enjoy the things that we're doing. I live in Brewer as well. So, being embedded in the community and helping, run Little League and basketball stuff and all this. I enjoy the energy the kids bring. They're just, they're seventh grade, so you never know what you're going to get in any given day. What attitudes they're going to have or enthusiasm they're going to have. And I think it's good for me personally, honestly, to just be like, you know what, we're going to have a good day. I'm tired as can be or whatever. It's like, all right, I got a few kids that I just know are going to come in cheery and, what's up, Mr. Dominick, and this and that. So that part of it, kids are kids. So that part of it I really liked is the energy they bring. They lift me up.
Yeah, Rob stole my answer a little bit in that I feel like it makes me be the best version of myself because the energy of the kids really is infectious and you want to try to stay on top of that, even as tough as it can be, like a Monday afternoon, that type of thing. The one thing I will say is that whenever people ask me what I teach and I tell them middle school math, I get one of two really wildly different reactions, but it's some version of, wow, good for you. But I will tell people it's never boring. That's why I like math. That's why I like middle school. There are no boring days with the group of kids that I have. And I feel like being back in the classroom, the one thing that you just can't replace is that the energy of the kids really is infectious. And so I did miss that a lot. There are certain things I really miss about the ambassador job, but the one part that was never quite there was that matching of the energy for the kids on a daily basis.
Well, thank you to all three of you, Rob, Joshua, Tracy, for giving us some time this evening. And it was great to visit with you guys and have a little retrospective of the podcast. And I know that it's provided some insight and entertainment for folks over the years, and as Tracy said, it's still on our YouTube channel, and there for people to access and learn from. And so, thank you again for your time, and it was wonderful talking with you guys.
That was really inspiring to hear how Rob, Joshua, and Tracy have taken their podcasting experiences and turned them into something bigger, like real-world tools that benefit their students.
Absolutely. I think what stood out the most was how this podcast was fostering collaboration, critical thinking, creativity, and celebrating the hard work that teachers are doing every day.
Don't forget that even though we're hitting pause with the Teaching with Tech podcast, you can look forward to more informative and helpful tech tidbits with the upcoming Commute PD podcast that's in the works for the Learning Through Technology team here at the Maine Department of Education. And of course, just because you may not hear us on this podcast doesn't mean we're not available. The MLTI Ambassador team is always ready to support you and your school with your educational technology needs.
If you have any questions about things you heard in this podcast or are just curious about how the team can support you and your school, please contact the MLTI and LTT teams at the Maine Department of Education by emailing us at dove.ltt@maine.gov. Well, Amy, I guess all good things must come to an end.
Yeah, except staff meetings. Those things seem to last forever. Oh, is my mic still on?